my covered porch area here. My phone overheated, so I had to interrupt my live stream. My phone just died on me, but it's cooled down now, and I'm in a much cooler area as far as temperature goes. So I figured we can kind of finish off this live stream. Got one of you in here now, but I thought it was a pretty good discussion that we were having there. So hopefully we can get more people back in here and talking about it. Talking about the meaning that you give things, and that's really where like I find it really important when it comes to like studying the economy, studying the information that we get, and how it is that we perceive this information. Like, is this information going to be damaging to us, or is this information going to be helpful? And if you look at all information as helpful information, then really you don't really look at like the information as being a negative thing that's happening, even though it might be negative information. It's really the meaning that we take behind it that gives it that negative feeling that we have. So again, like I thought that was important that we were talking about that and that we kind of continue on with that conversation. And then also we might as well just kind of talk about what we were talking about in the live stream earlier anyway, and that is how the system had been basically bailed out during the pandemic using the special purpose vehicles to load the corporations up with a bunch of cash. Those who are viable corporations who can roll their debt over in the future and just kind of make it through this time, they're going to be, the ones who exist through this. The zombie corporations who need ever increasing amounts of debt in order to survive, they're going to actually suffer as these interest rates are going to be too much of a burden to them, and then they start to, end up, you know, defaulting on their loans and going bankrupt and whatnot. But still, let's kind of continue on. If you guys, when you get into the live stream, to hit the like button so that we can get the algorithm to pick up the video and start spreading it around a little bit more. I find that that topic that we were just talking about, the finding meaning, and what it is that you find meaning in when things happen. Like, do we find it to make us upset? Do we find it to be like a neutral thing that we really need to put the meaning, or how it is that we feel about it is our responsibility to understand that. You know, like even when it comes down to something as much as like a job loss, that's kind of like a really good one, because people, when you lose a position or something like that you have, you feel like inadequate almost. Like, why wasn't I good enough for this job? Why didn't they like me? What happened here? Or you turn into like a defensive thing where you're like, man, screw those people, they hated me, they're a bunch of jerks or whatever. And you don't really necessarily take it on as something that is a neutral in your life. Like, hey, that job wasn't cool anyway. It really was tying me up from pursuing the things that I really want to do in my life. I didn't really enjoy that anyway. The meaning that you give it is all about you. Like, you could take it on as a very negative thing and say, hey man, I was deeply hurt by the things that happened there. Or you could say, hey, I mean, I got an experience from being there. It didn't work out too well, and I'm moving on to the things that I do know I can do and do well at. And when you give it that sort of meaning, it makes not only just enjoying life a lot easier, but then also the energy that you put into the the things that go on in your life begin to have a more positive nature to it as well, because of the meaning that you give that, right? So, again, like if you're walking around bummed out, feeling depressed, feeling anger or something like that, the people that you engage with are going to feel that energy off of you. But if you're in a position of like excitement and fun and enjoyment, just kind of having more of these positive feelings, people are going to relate to that. They're going to see it. They're going to notice it, and they're going to start bringing you the experience that you were hoping to see or wanting to see or anticipating seeing, because this is the environment that you have created for yourself, because that's the meaning that it has behind it. I mean, it's not really that complicated. It's hard to understand when you're in the thick of like depression or something, because believe me, I had my time with it. And when you're in that sort of level, you end up finding things to numb it, right? So, you end up drinking a lot, or you're doing a lot of drugs, or you're doing, whatever. It to try and, alleviate this pain that you're feeling, that you just don't want to feel it anymore, but you don't recognize why you're feeling it. So that's really why, it's a major problem. most of the time it's left over from some childhood experience where, you're teased or, made to believe a certain thing, and then as you grew up you just kind of have this self-conscious understanding that's the way it is, but then not realizing that now it's the reason why you end up like having attachment issues or having anger issues or whatever. It's just like all these different things start to come up from it. But again, it's like just kind of understanding what it is and the feelings that you're having from it and the meaning that you put behind it all is really where it comes down to, like answering a lot of the questions that you may have about it, is just becoming literally aware. Like, I'm having this feeling. I'm looking at it. Like, what is this thing? And how do I deal with it is more of like, how many times have I felt this? How far back can I remember feeling this thing? Was it a singular incident that took place that now has me feeling this way? It's something that maybe happened when I was a kid. When you recognize it for that and you just sit there and you think about it, like when you bottle those things, that's when the problems start to come up. But when you just let it be there, just let it say, no, man, I'm mad about this. Why? Like, why am I mad? And you just kind of think about it for a while and think about how many times you were mad about that same situation or something similar to that, and you'll realize what really is the cause of that thing, and then you'll be able to deal with it a lot faster and easier the next time it comes around. So, we got any questions? No, and then people are just listening. We've got 73 of you up in here. Go ahead and hit that like button. And is there really nobody talking? That doesn't sound right. Live chat. Oh, there we go. There's a few comments. Okay. I was going to say, nobody's commenting. Here we go. Hey, Chris, man. Thank you. Looks cool inside the container. No, I'm not actually in the container. I do have a couple of containers. I'm actually behind the house. This is like a covered patio that I have here. Right on. Chris, yeah, Chris is a buddy of mine. Back up. There we go. All right. Love the channel. Keep crushing. Hey, thank you very much. It was put my glasses. There we go. Vibra Finance CEO. Vibra Finance CEO. Well, thank you very much. All right. I really think student loan is a big one. Yeah, I mean, the student loan issue is going to be a big one. But then again, I've been listening to the student loan like debacle thing happening for like a long time, and so it just makes me wonder. It was just like, is this like, I mean, what's next? I mean, I'm just almost like, okay, let's see what happens. Do something, right? And so I can at least understand what it is that's going to take place, because right now it just seems to be a lot of talk and theory and, rhetoric and stuff like that. So I don't know. Like, I'm going to be in like a wait and see, like what is actually going to happen. We're back, baby. Yes, we are. New location looks nice. Yeah, it's much cooler in here than it is in the car, so I'm guessing you guys can hear me all right, too. All right. You are an SPV in Admiralty, using military circus 3 times taxed inflationary Federal Reserve debt notes. All right. It just wasn't meant to be. Meat spin. Positive attitude bring positive things. And it's not just positive attitude. Like, it is a positive attitude towards things, but it's a matter of like having like a positive energy within, right? Because a lot of times people don't realize that they are engaging in behaviors that are left over from the subconscious thing that they don't even realize that they have, right? And it creates this ego, this world, right? This world that they have to have, and if it doesn't land within this world, then they get quite upset. Like, I remember my stepmother, right? Who I look back, like, she was kind of mean, and I look back and I think it wasn't that she was mean, it's just that she didn't know how to really like express her emotions. So she would get really like animated and very lit up and very angry about like, or seemingly angry. She wasn't really angry, but it seemed angry, right? And it was over little stuff, right? And so everything had to be very perfect for her. Like, all the house always, like, you couldn't leave your shoes laying around. You always had to put your shoes away, stuff like that. And if you didn't do it, you were going to hear about it, right? So she had this very adamant, set way on the way things were having to be. And she created this kind of like ego. Like, she had this ego. And didn't create one. It was that way. And so, like, I had to behave in a certain fashion, right? And if I fell out of that, then, I was like, I was, like, it wasn't made to feel, but I felt like I wasn't, adequate, right? Or that, somehow I wasn't doing things right. Like I wasn't worthy, right? And so with some of these things, kind of, and that was a lot of the reasons why I ended up having, like, issues with school and going to school, is because I just, again, like, it was just like, well, I'm not good enough to do that kind of stuff, so I don't care, right? And so you build up this defense, like, I don't care about it, and then therefore you don't have to worry about whether or not you do good at it, because you just don't care about it, right? And that's, again, it's like a defense mechanism to dealing with, the fact that you weren't smart, or being told you weren't smart. And so, like, these are the type of things that end up coming up. Forgot why I brought it up. I just lost my train of thought on that one. Sorry, guys. Hey, right on. Local Enterprise Broadcasting. Thank you so much for the $9.99, man. That's very cool of you. And thank you, everybody who's joining in on this live stream. We got 104 of you right now with 37 likes. Go hit that like button. We'll get a few more people out here in the comments section, which always makes the conversation better. Why can't the BRICS countries go to a gold standard, but the U.S. can't? They can't either. They're not going to do well. Anybody can go back onto a gold standard, right? The problem with it is that, what are you going to do when you have to import everything that you are consuming, right? The United States is an importing nation. We are a consuming nation. So one can easily say, oh, we can just make this stuff for ourselves. You're right, we could. We don't, right? We are lazy bastards who have a much higher standard of living than most people around the world, and we are not going to make our stuff for ourselves. It's just not going to happen, right? So we have to import everything that we really enjoy for a standard of living, right? It comes from other nations. What are you going to export? Gold. It's the only thing you have, right? I mean, unless you have a commodity or a product or some sort of industriousness to your people that provides you with a balanced trade, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to bring in more stuff than you export. And if you are not exporting, enough of your industriousness, right, then what you're going to export is all the gold, and then you won't have any gold, and you'll fall into poverty. So the BRICS nations, so long as they are a productive nation, could very well go into a gold standard and force everybody to pay them in gold. And that will work out just fine until they fall themselves into luxuries and stop becoming an industrious nation and start relying on the imports of foreigners, and then they will lose all their gold to whoever they are. Right? But by that time, they'll probably cut themselves off from the gold standard, go to a 100% fiat currency, much like the United States did. And none of us are going to be around to experience that, because it's going to take like 100 years to get there. Now, I'm not saying anything like that's going to take place. All I'm saying is like, when you ask, like, how come it is that the BRICS can do it? Any nation can do it. It's the results of what happens from a nation that does. Right? Same thing would happen with Bitcoin. If you decided to go to Bitcoin, then the nation that exports the most production will import the most Bitcoin, eventually want to use that Bitcoin to enjoy their standard of living, increase it, start buying into foreign production, and then eventually export all their Bitcoin out, and they will all be in poverty. It's the same cycle that will happen no matter what. And so even here in the United States, we're going to be suffering with the idea that the safe and liquid asset of the U.S. Treasury is going to have to start falling into the hands, or the issuance of a safe and liquid asset like the U.S. Treasury is going to have to start falling into the hands of another nation. And now the idea is that it's going to end up being China, right? Well, I don't know if that's necessarily the idea, but the yuan seems to be the currency that is making the most headway as far as stepping up and being used as a world reserve currency, or as a reserve currency. There is going to be some major problems coming from that for China. One of them is, and you can already see it taking place, and that is the fact that as their currency gets stronger, or the demand for their currency starts to increase, as people are needing that in order to make the purchases, they're going to find that their exports are going to become very difficult for a lot of the other nations out there. Now, China doesn't want that. They don't want their currency to get stronger. In fact, they want it pegged to the dollar so it stays fairly stable. And that's going to be a problem for them when it comes to trying to provide a currency to the world. Like, how do you print up all this money and give it out to the world and not create that situation in which that you have it pegged to the dollar? Like you can't. I mean, I'm sure there's a way of it happening, but there's no like. I don't think there's a way of doing it right now, is all I guess I'm getting at. And so, how do you get your currency out to the world? You have to import stuff and export dollars, like the United States does, and that's how they're able to actually provide the world with the dollars. And they're willing to go in deep into debt, which would provide the world with the safe and liquid asset like the U.S. Treasury. So China could do both those things. They can say, "Hey, we're going to start issuing out a lot of debt like the U.S. Treasury, and go deep into debt," and then people would trust that, saying, "Okay, yes, I trust China is going to pay me back when I lend them money by buying their bond." So there would have to be that as well. And that, I'm not saying it's not possible. I just don't think it's very likely right now. So that would have to take place, and then China would have to go into like mass deficit spending, like being able to go out there and just buy the world's products out there so they can distribute the yuan out there. These things, like, this is like how it would have to occur. I'm not saying it's not going to occur, it's just that you'd have to see these things happening. And as the yuan begins to get stronger, you find that China gets mad about it. Like, they're not, man, this is not going to work out very well for us. Every time this happens, we get this mass rise in unemployment because everybody's factory operations start to shut down. Right? It Again, that's from the demand from the people saying, "Hey, we want to use the yuan instead of the dollar," right? So they try to get the yuan, which strengthens the yuan. I mean, look what happened. Look what's happening in like Russia and in India right now. I mean, this whole de-dollarization thing is not working out well for them. They sold an insane amount of oil to India. It took rupees, and now these rupees sit in India, right? They sit in India banks, and they're not doing anything because there's a lot more stuff that India wants from Russia than Russia wants from India. And that's a problem because now India is like, "No, you're not going to sell our currency out there. That's not the way this is going to work. You can buy our stuff," right? And Russia's like, "We don't want your stuff. We want other people's stuff." But there's nothing they can do about it. So now it's locked up in these Indian rupees. You know, that's why I'm saying this I'm not trying to deny the whole dollar de-dollarization thing. Like, I'm not trying to say that it's not occurring. It is occurring. There's people out there doing it. What the results of this is going to be is not what I think a lot of people are anticipating. It's going to be a lot more harmful for people who feel that it's going to weaken the dollar as opposed to strengthening it. I mean, even when it came down to because I kind of screwed Gresham's law up the other day when I was doing that video. Because I had done the video, like, I tried to do the video like 4 times. I tried to do it in the morning and then at lunch or whatever. And what I was trying to get at is that generally Gresham's law is looking at currency from like the seller's point of view. Like, I will only accept, this good currency as opposed to the bad currency. And so what ends up happening is that bad money will end up driving out the bad currency will drive out the good currency. Right? And is that people would end up like stashing and hoarding and pushing the good currency away, leaving only the bad currency out there in existence. Right? So bad currency pushes out good. But I was looking at it from like the buyer's point of view. Like, I have the currency, right? And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to use this currency. And as the bad currency is not in demand, I'm going to try and hoard onto the good currency and push out the bad, right? So meaning that, like, from the seller's point of view, the good currency pushes the bad out, right? Not the other way around, where the bad pushes the good out when you're looking at it from the buyer's side of things. So even, when it comes to Gresham's law, when we think about it from this point of view, right, whether you're a buyer or seller, and which way that, who's going to end up hoarding onto the currency and which one's going to end up being used, you think about it, bad currency is the one that gets used, right? It's the one that ends up being the one in supply as the good currency gets hidden, right? It's the one that the buyer wants to push out there. It's the one that ends up being in use as the good currency gets stashed and hoarded away. Well, that's what's happening here. You think about it, like, yuan is not the good currency, it's the bad currency, and it's the one that ends up getting used. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh no, you're looking at this completely wrong." It's not, right? Because the dollar is strengthening. Look at what's going on in Argentina. right now, right? They are suffering with the fact that they cannot get a hold of the dollars. And so now they are figuring out ways that they can buy things in yuan because they simply can't find the dollars. That's the good currency that they can't get, right? So they're using the crappy currency instead because it is accessible, right? And the person on the other end is willing to take it. I mean, this is, I know it's very different from the way a lot of other people would look at this, but that's the way I see it, right? Is that when you see countries like Argentina who are in dollar shortage right now, who very much want to use the dollar, who want the dollar, can't get enough of them, and now need to find another currency to use, right? That doesn't, like, that's not adding to the dollar weakness, that's adding to the dollar strength. Right? It's just a matter, again, it's kind of like the meaning that you give it, like how you feel about that, right? Yeah, let's move on. And thank you very much for that $9.99. It's very cool of you for the super chat. All right, I had a student loan years ago, and I once realized that it occurred daily interest charges like a mortgage. I doubled up my payments to pay it off as soon as possible. Well, good for you. You know, like there has never been a better feeling than to get out of debt. And like every once in a while, like I'll do something, run up on the credit card or something. Like I rented a car and took a bunch of kids to like this trampoline park, right? And I put all that on the credit card, and so all of a sudden you have like this credit card bill, and you're like, oh man, and then it is so, if like I already had the money to pay it off, I just put it on the credit card for convenience. But like even paying it off, knowing that it was a debt that you had intended, right, to begin with, for some reason it just feels so much better. Like all of a sudden it's just like you just get rid of this debt. Getting rid of debt makes you feel good. It like literally makes you feel good. And it's so interesting to think about that. Like even if it's a debt that you did on purpose with the cash that you were intending to pay, like you had it the entire time, but still doing it somehow feels good. You know what I mean, right? All right, nice venue change. Yeah, thanks. Well, my phone was cooking in my car. I was sweating in there too. Okay, hey, Yui, just coming through, so I'm not sure if this live has a topic, but I've always wanted to know your thoughts on Bitcoin and also the recent BlackRock ETF. Disregard if this is too off topic. No, there's nothing that's off topic. We can talk about anything you want. Um, as far as like the impacts to Bitcoin, and as far as BlackRock and the ETF and all that other stuff, I mean, to be honest, I think like there's people out there who understand like how it is to make money off of this kind of trade. My thoughts on it all is that it just kind of goes to show that this is not going away. Like this is the Bitcoin thing is going to be more prevalent. It's going to be more exposed, more used, more accepted, more regulations, all this other stuff is really starting to take place. Now, I'm personally in an attempt to try and acquire one Bitcoin, like one Bitcoin worth of Bitcoin, right? Because obviously, you're buying pieces of Bitcoin if you're buying just little bits of it. But that's my goal. I don't know what it is that I intend on doing with that, like, or what I anticipate is going to happen with that Bitcoin. But to see like all the institutions really start to, give it some, give more clarity to the rules, to the investments, to the engagement in those investments, it only leads me to believe that it's going to be more of a viable thing going into the future. So, I mean, again, like I couldn't tell you like the specifics of what this ETF is going to be like or what it's going to do, but from somebody who's just like basically just looked at Bitcoin from a long time ago and saying, okay, this is something that is like the genie out of the bottle. It is not going back in. It's happening. Anyway. All right. People buying homes, cars, vacations, etc. all think lost up to 6 figures of student debt, 3 years of compliance. Huh. Wait a minute. We are seeing a side of UE we haven't seen before. The left side, that is. Oh yeah, I guess you're right, huh? No, that's not true. I used to sit in the passenger seat. No, I guess I sat in the passenger seat and put the camera in front of me, didn't I? When I sat in the Explorer before it got smashed. All right, Internet of Things allows you to trade commodity for commodity with gold as the reserve asset for settlement. Gold standard causes crushing deflation. Gold only works as money with silver to expand the money supply. The reason it never worked was the trade deficit and the lack of metals in circulation. It's not that it doesn't work, it works just fine. It's just that there's economic forces that are going to take place, right? And so when people say that you can't say that it doesn't work, it works. It works exactly the way it works. I mean, there's no denying that. What it doesn't do is provide a consistent system forever, right? And there is none. There is no consistent system forever. Everything has a lifespan to it. And that's, I think, what's really important for people to understand is that, when you put this idea that this is the way it ought to be, or like, especially like, well, this is the way it used to be, why have things changed? Because everything is in a constant change, right? Especially when it comes to like economic policy, because that's all cyclical. Like, I mean, the expansion of the gold standard, when it came to the United States and selling products all over the world and bringing in all the gold, it got to a point where we were going to have to distribute that gold back out to the rest of the world, and it wasn't going to look pretty, right? So, had to come up with another concept, and this is it. Now, this is going to come to its end. Now, how they are able to expand the cycle to get it to carry on, as the debt burden becomes more burdensome than anybody's willing to tolerate, who knows? Like negative interest rates, cryptocurrencies, all these other concepts have never been introduced into an economy before. So we get to see, what it's like for the first time, like, what this actually gets to be like. Nobody knows what it's like to have Bitcoin for a world reserve currency. We do know what it's like to have gold as a world reserve currency and the causes and effects from it. From what I've learned from it, I would assume that Bitcoin is going to have very similar effects, just in a lot more efficient manner to it, where you're going to have the rise of industrial nations only to fall back into poverty again as as the concentration of wealth gets people to move into luxuries. It's the same cycle that takes place over and over again. So, again, like, as the way things ought to be to the way things should be to the way things just are, I think is really about the way you feel and the way, you look at it. So, all right, more questions. Okay, is that a tattoo of Jerome Powell on your arm? No, it's a tattoo of a big old lion. Isn't that thing bad? Man, I love it. All right. We export. Okay, terrible. All right. AC rules UE. The U.S. greatest export is. Can we expect? All right. The gold standard makes it so that the rich will hoard money even when there are 20, 30-year long general strikes. Investments or getting out of gold is too risky. Doesn't China need dollars to buy U.S. treasuries? Well, you need dollars to buy U.S. treasuries, but even worse, what is happening is that China needs dollars to pay their debts because they have offshore dollar-denominated bonds, right? So these are bonds that are due in dollars that they have issued in dollars. And now the easiest way to acquire dollars is to sell U.S. treasuries. So when you see like articles about China getting out of U.S. debt, saying they're dumping U.S. treasuries at the fastest rate in history or something like that. When you see these type of articles coming out, that is not China getting out of dollars. That is China getting into dollars. They are trying to get a hold of dollars to pay their debts. That's what's going on, right? Otherwise, they would just hold on to the U.S. treasuries and make the interest off of it. But when you see your opportunity to make money or that you need the money, then that's when you sell. So it's not a surprise when I see China dumping US treasuries. A lot of people look at that as like a negative for the dollar. It's not, it's positive. It's saying that they need dollars in order to facilitate some of the trades that they have going on. Mainly it's paying off some of their dollar denominated debts. they need a reserve bank that will accept the exchange. Only you can prevent forest fire. All the people that haven't been smart with their debt or save it eventually catches up. The gold standard is what they want. This is what they did in 1873. The gold standard only makes the rich able to hold massive wealth, no matter how poor the plebs are. I think that's if the meaning that you give it. Again, like, when it comes to a gold standard, it also gives the individual the opportunity to finally save, to work and save in a way that provides a purchasing power into the future that is secured inside of their money. That's not something that you have today. You can't secure your purchasing power in the money. That's not where purchasing power is secured. You got to secure your purchasing power in assets like real estate, and if that's what you're anticipating going up, or stocks or something else, right? Because, or in a lesser case, like nowadays, you can put it in gold and silver. The only problem is that, like with silver, it's so manipulated, it's hard to really get your purchasing power back out of it, or to be able to save it with the purchasing power. But that's the whole thing. The dollar isn't meant to hold on to it. It's meant to facilitate a trade. That's it. And whether you trade your time for rent or utilities or food or stocks, it's your own fault if you hold on to it in dollars. Right? Now, if you are holding on to it in dollars, then it is your own fault, and you're doing it on purpose, and it's not a fault, right? You're doing it on purpose because you're intending that you're going to be able to buy something in the future for a better price. Mainly like when things go into recession, you're able to buy a lot of stuff that goes on sale. So it's all about the meaning that you give it, right? A lot of people want to just look at the dollar and just say, no, it's a worthless asset that goes to zero, but yet you need it to pay your bills, so it's not a worthless thing, And trade without having to protect the world's shipping channels. China benefits in trade without, they do. But now, how is it that they are going to be able to fund those shipping channels without the issuance of debt, right? Like, to sell enough merchandise to actually buy all those ships and all that stuff, that's not feasible, right? You can only use debt to do that. So how are they going to get that debt issued out there? The debt still need to be paid in dollars. We suffer more. The only thing worse for us than a fiat is a gold-only standard. We need bimetallism or two assets. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it was two or one. You can have gold, silver, copper, Bitcoin. You can have all that stuff, right? You can have them all working simultaneously. It doesn't matter. The most industrious nation is going to consume all the money, right? All the available Bitcoin, all the available Litecoin, all the available gold and silver, and they will just continue to do it until they have consumed everything, start falling into luxuries, and then just redistribute the Bitcoin, the Litecoin, the gold, everything else back out to the rest of the world, right? It doesn't. If it's a fixed amount of money, then it's going to go through that cycle. No doubt about it. Unless you can somehow prevent the people from moving into luxuries, right? So if you can prevent that, if you could figure out how to balance trade on every nation, right? So everybody has an equal balance in trade. You export as much as you import perfectly, right? Every nation. Then okay, yeah, all right, I'd agree. You can have a bimetal. You can have all those fixed, amounts of currencies and stuff like that. It would totally, I agree. But that's not what's going to happen, because you can't create that situation. It's like a perfect society or something like that. It's impossible. It's not going to work like that. And the reason why it's not going to work is because, one, when people work hard, they want to enjoy their hard work. And when you tell people, hey, you worked hard, but guess what? You don't get to enjoy your hard work. You have to reinvest that into other purposes and not enjoy the benefits of that either, right? Does that make sense? No, of course not. So it's not going to work like that. So you can't, it's just, it's better to understand it in a way that says, I can take advantage of the situation. Like if we do happen to move into a gold standard, to know what that's going to be like and why, things are occurring the way they are. So, because it's going to be cyclical. There's going to be the the transfer of wealth. There's going to be the power shift. All those things are going to happen, and to understand why they occur is better than saying that this one's better than that one, because it's only better in a certain aspect for a certain amount of time, right? It does, because nothing, it's not going to be that way forever, unless, like I said, you can create this perfect society, which doesn't exist. All right. Okay, if you want the dollar to lose strength, pay off the debts. No, that would actually cause the dollar to strengthen, right? By paying off debts, because if you when an instrument of debt is created, it becomes dollars themselves, right? So if you can imagine, like when a foreign nation creates a bond that is due in dollars, right? They sell that bond for dollars. They have the dollars. Now that bond that is due in dollars is now used as leverage, like as if it was dollars, right? So when that bond gets paid off, it destroys dollars. When debt gets destroyed, it destroys dollars. If all the debts in the world were ever paid off, like there was no more student loan debt, no more U.S. Treasury debt, no more credit card, no more cars, no more mortgages, no more debt, no more debt, the dollar would cease to exist, and yet we would still owe. There would still be an interest to pay. That's what's scary about the situation with fiat currency. That's why it's so important to have an insurance policy that's tied up in precious metals, or cryptocurrencies on a lesser extent. But that's out of that third party, because that's literally the situation. We are playing with a game that has no feasible way of getting out of it. I mean, seriously, there is no way of getting out of it without complete and utter collapse, and people literally like losing their livelihoods, losing everything they had. That's the only way you can get out of it. Otherwise, it's a system in which that is going to either perpetually continue to grow and get bigger and more cumbersome, or it's pain and suffering. And those who see it don't really look at the pain and suffering as something that they're going to experience, because they know it's coming, right? I mean, it's like, if you know that there's going to be an issue with the currency coming into the future, and you don't know how far out that is, and you don't know exactly what that looks like, well, then you might want to get into real money, right? Because the currency is going to change, and if you understand the difference between currency and money, then it makes it a little simpler to try and position yourself in a way that, deals with that. Federal Reserve notes are not USD. They are representative. They're a representation of USD. Grand level, do you show proof the number of dollars is gold? In 1971, Nixon silver standard ended. Okay. You guys are all talking. Let's miss this. Hit the like button. Free way to show your support. Yeah, thank you very much. Absolutely. We have 135 of you, 135 of you up in here, and 85 likes. We got one super chat. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate the support. And yeah, definitely support the channel by hitting the like button. It's the only time I really ever ask for you guys to hit the like button is when I'm doing live streams, and you know that, because with my regular videos, if you really appreciate the video, if you really like it, I figure you'll hit the like button, and then that will let me know if I'm doing a good job or not. When I'm doing these live streams, it's a little different, because the like button really tells the algorithm, hey, there's a lot of engagement happening here. This is a popular live stream that's happening, and it will start spreading it around. Now, that's to get the comments going, so that we can have a better time here with the live stream and with the comments, because really it's all about your comments. That's really what it comes down to. All right, thanks UE for opening up a chat to express our frustrations with the O'Day's government. Yeah, you bet. There's that dinner recipes for two. I like the channel name. You bet. Well, again, this is my experiences with this, right? This is what I'm doing to try and figure out what it is that I need to do in order to make the best decisions for my family. And as I've gone through like some experience as far as like this YouTube channel and what it's done for me, I realized that it's not just understanding economics. There's something bigger that's happening to me, and it was, and not quite knowing it, like just feeling that there's just something happening when I started understanding it a little bit better. Like I said, a lot of Aaron Doughty's videos really helped out because, he kind of went through the same things with his channel that I was going through almost at the exact same time. I mean, he started his channel in 2017, I did as well. He talked about some of the experiences that he had as far as like, trying to put out videos on daily videos, and what that was like, and the changes to the way he felt about his channel. I mean, it was almost as if like, man, dude, we were going through the exact same thing at the exact same time. I didn't even know who he was. Like, I just learned about his channel just a year ago or something. So like, kind of understanding this a lot better and kind of relating to a lot of his information as well, it really opened up like my understanding of like not only how it is that I feel about like my situation that I'm in, the decisions that I make, the things that I'm looking at, or the videos that I make. All of it really started to change for me, and becoming aware of why I was going through that. It really helped, and now that's basically becoming more aware of just like basically my own thoughts, right? I mean, this is the thing, when you fill your head 100% of the time with economic information, you can really spit out some stuff. Right? And the same thing is going to happen if you are following politics, right? If you are following politics 100% of the time, and you are taking on a particular political belief, like you are on one side of the fence or the other, instead of just looking at the information for what it is, but really looking at information as this is the way it should be, and the problem is with that, and this is the and you start picking all these things. What ends up happening is that you're filling your mind with that constant belief, right? And then all of a sudden, this is the person that you end up becoming, right? You end up becoming this person who spits out rhetoric of political beliefs. Right? Well, you can do that with just about any information out there. It doesn't really matter what it is. You can do it with religious, like biblical information. You can do it with economics. You can do it with baseball. You can do it with fishing. You can do it with mechanics. You can do it with anything you want, right? And so when you take on this constant thought, right, then you become what that thought is, right? And that's, I mean, you hear it all the time. You are what you think about, right? And it's literally, that's how it happened. I mean, I thought so much about economics, and then I was coming out here committed to putting out daily videos on YouTube. What's up, bro?
Good time.
He's got a bunch of sand in his shoe. He's not know. That was Freddie. So this is like what ends up happening when you have this continuous thought, that is out there, or when you make sure to be aware of what it is that you are thinking. So if you're thinking about things that are like whatever, like the World Economic Forum is going to make me eat bugs or something like that, and this is what you constantly think about, then guess what? You're going to be frustrated with everything going on, believing that the world is going to make you eat bugs. I mean, so it's like, yeah, it's again, it's all about what it is that you're thinking. And sorry, I said that, and Sarah looked at me like, who's eating bugs? All right. Debt jubilee is inevitable. We have reached the end of the currency lifespan, so global reset is necessary. Maybe. We'll see. I mean, I've been hearing about this debt jubilee pretty much since I started studying economics, and I don't know. I don't see it. Let's see here. Trading debt for precious metals feels better. There is no such thing as a free lunch, What in the... You will not crucify man upon a cross of blockchain. If people want want the dollar to go away, they need to pay off their debts and stop taking on more. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. If you want the dollar to go away, you stop taking on dollar-denominated debt. You'd also have to stop buying, like, well, I mean, I guess you'd have to stop paying for services using dollar, right? Because you don't want to use the dollar there, and you'd have to refuse service in dollars, like refuse, like, or not refuse payment in dollars. Sorry. So that's like, all those things. I don't see it happening. All right, paying off a loan feels great, but it doesn't make you heroic. Lots of laughs. It just shows good character. That's right. And I will. I mean, certainly doesn't make you heroic, but what it does do is it puts you in a different frame, right? And it puts you in a frame of feeling better. The energy of feeling better will then be more engaging energy. When you have more engaging energy, you have more confident energy, and with more confident energy, you would therefore be somewhat more of a heroic condition, right? People would look at you as a stronger person. They would look at you as somebody who has their stuff together, somebody who can make things happen and make it work, right? That's that. I would have to almost disagree. I think that would be almost heroic. What do you use at least? What You would have to use at least two coins that use different methods of expansion on the expands of rare and one that shrinks. Thanks for the response, Huey. I'm in the same boat. Yeah, you bet. Epstein loves BTC. He was the first BTC billionaire. Okay. With fires in Canada, what happens to the lumber prices and lumber coming into the U.S.? Again, like I've talked about this one before, but just to kind of briefly talk about it, it's going to have an impact at some point in the markets. Now, the initial impact might have a speculative kind of impact, as far as like people saying, "Oh man, this is going to cause a bunch of lumber shortages out there." But really, the mills themselves are not going to be directly impacted at the exact moment of the fires. That's going to take a while before the lack of lumber coming in or lack of timber coming in due to the fact that you can't even get to the woods because of the fire will turn into the fires going out and then going into salvage mode and lots of trees going to the mills because of it. But there will be a gap in production from that. How dramatic, how much, who knows? But these wildfires happen every year. I mean, it's not like this is the first time. And it's not like that's all the lumber or all the mills that produce lumber. I mean, there's mills all over the country, all over Canada that are still operating. So. Yui's has cats. No, I have a cat, and he mainly stays outside. His name is Orange Boy. He is a big orange cat, and he comes in the morning, eats, and then he goes back outside because he pretty much lives outside. He doesn't like it. I mean, he likes it inside, all right. I mean, he comes in and hangs out with us, but he's really an outdoor cat that loves being outside. All right. Do you know that the extra climate tax, Justin, is collecting offsets all the billions of tons of CO2 from fires? Please do keep up with the current affairs. I Okay. I mean, okay. I mean, if you're asking me, like, how it is that these climate taxes and all this other stuff, I have never once ever incorporated any of that stuff into my ideas of what was happening with lumber futures, lumber demand, any of that stuff, right? Now, that might be some political awareness that you want to take in and incorporate into the idea, and it might work out for you. I mean, no. I mean, to me, that has like it's like the tariffs, right? The damn softwood tariffs that the United States put on Canada during a time that the prices were at their all-time highs, right? People wanted to call that like a political thing that was taking place. Both Trump and Biden did that, right? Like that was not a Democratic or Republican thing. This is an economic point of view that was taking place. It didn't matter what political view you had, right? They were trying to prevent Canada from dumping lumber into the United States, this anti-dumping measure or whatever, and they found that Canada wasn't really doing that. Now there's a whole political argument that takes place inside of that, and I've looked into it many times. You know what? It doesn't really matter when it came to the futures price. I didn't incorporate that into my ideas. What I looked into was demand. What I looked into was supply. What I looked into was manufacturing. That's what I was looking at. I didn't look at the political environment of things, right? Because in that you're going to really cloud your understanding of things. Like it's very telling. And I'm not saying that it's not, right? I'm not saying that all politics is worthless information. I'm not saying that at all. But when you listen to rhetoric and you try to incorporate that into your economic theories, you are going to be very frustrated and confused by that. Because a lot of it is just that. It's just rhetoric. It doesn't have any kind of outcome or any kind of real cause and effects to anything. It's just a bunch of like hot air that's being voiced out there that sounds very, very real, but it's quite theater, and it's very theatrical in its nature, just to get the people to feel in a particular direction. If they can keep everybody in fear, right? And fear is a very low vibration feeling, right? And most people live in this condition. They're scared of their job, scared of their families, scared of their whatever. There's some kind of behavior in which that they are in fear of, right? They don't want to behave in a certain way that gets them fired, or has their wife or their husband yelling at them, or somehow maybe even with their kids, like they don't want their kids to think to hate them or something like that, so they spoil their kids. This is like all this type of thing is fear, right? It's all fear based, and when you have this fear based, you're on a very low vibration, and low vibration does not bring you in the positive things, like positive opportunities in life. It brings you negative opportunities, right? Everything like that comes from that is also like your ego, right? Because that's a lot of what comes down with fear, is that the world needs to be in this particular way, and if it isn't, my whole world is going to fall apart. So like you try and keep everything into this kind of picture, this frame of it, and that's why, like, being scared of things and being in that low vibration is something that you really have to remove, right? You have to get out of that whole belief system, because like once you remove the fear, you can start elevating the vibration, right? You come up into a higher vibe where you start feeling, more accepting and more involved, right, with things, instead of like excluding things out there, saying, man, this is not for me, I can't stand that, I'm not gonna play that game or whatever, right? Then you start opening it up. You don't mean you have to open it up. It's just the universe starts opening it up and saying, hey, check this out. Look at what we're offering you. These are the things that are out there. And when you remove like those barriers, then they really start to show themselves. But most of the time we can't do that because we do live in the fear. And so we have to, like, we don't have to, but we end up doing like things like, hey, man, if I don't have this particular job or earn this much money, my whole world is going to fall apart, when really that's not the case. Like, you can let go of that and just say, no, man, the world is full of opportunities out there. I don't know what they are, and I'm not scared of what they are, what's to come, right? And that's really where like being, changing that vibration from fear and elevating it up really makes the difference. I mean, I know it made the difference for me. That's the other thing, like, and I really experienced this a lot myself, like from smoking weed, right? Like when I quit drinking, it was a big deal for me, but I kept smoking weed, right? And when you're depressed and you smoke weed, you feel good. Like, I mean, it works, right? It's like, you take your vibration from on a scale of 1 to 10, you take it from like a 2 up to a 5 or a 6, and you're feeling pretty good, right? So when you smoke, you raise your vibration. But then when you're done being high, then it drops your vibration back down again. You're back to depressed. So you're on this constant smoke, right? So you're just, just stay stoned all day. and you kind of just operate that way. So pretty soon you're just kind of operating through life in a stone-based consciousness, right? And a lot of people can operate pretty well that way. Like I had a buddy that I watched take 32 bong hits in a row, and he didn't really act much different from the second or third one to the last one. He just kind of was just that's the way he just operated all day. And a lot of people do that. Well, what I found was is that things like that would really excite me and raise my vibration naturally would then be dropped when I would smoke weed. So like maybe I was like really enjoying like a particular event, like maybe we'd be at a barbecue or something like that, and the music's really good and the conversation's really lively and everybody's having just a really great time, and a joint gets passed around and then you get stoned, and then I would find that like, man, I don't feel as good as I just did a few minutes ago before I got stoned. Like I feel okay, I feel all right, but really I was feeling good. Like I was engaging with people, everything was awesome, and now I'm smoked and I'm just kind of sitting here and being quiet and just kind of enjoying the numbness of it, right? Well, that's like a lowering of the vibration, and so realizing that right there, that feeling, just understanding that within itself, it's made a huge difference, for me. Like even the desire to want to get high, I don't like. I'm starting to feel naturally higher all the time without anything. Just sitting here enjoying a cup of coffee, right? I got to get off the coffee too because that leaves me in a caffeine-based consciousness, which is very similar, right? You're messing with your vibrations by even drinking coffee. So same thing. Anyway, man, I am really babbling in today, aren't I? Well, we got 115 of you up in here. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. And I got another super chat. Is that what's going on? Let's go find that then. Wow, look at all these comments. Oh my gosh, guys. Man, I must have been really babbling while you guys were talking here. Holy moly. Okay. Thank you very much. The dude over there, O2. Great name. Hey, UE, caught you live. Just saying hi. Hope all is well. I'm liking the nature sounds and shed laid back weekend feel. Well done, Simon. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for the comment. Thank you for the super chat. You guys are also very awesome, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate all the support. Look at all this. Okay. Let's go back down to the bottom here, man. I'm sorry I'm skipping over all those comments, but I had no idea you guys had made so many of them here. All right. When people have no better argument to make, they resort to insults. Yeah, and that's exactly the truth, and you find like if people are insulting other people, like especially if you're making fun of another person, right? Um, it's really showing more about who you are than the person you're actually talking about. There's people I've seen, like even on my channel, who will like just completely insult my intelligence or something like that, call me a moron and say that I know nothing of the Fed and all kinds of stuff. And I think about it, it was just like, the mark of an educated mind is to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And I've had some great conversations with people who totally disagree with me, right? And it's that's the difference, is that you're talking with an intelligent person when they can actually engage in a conversation with you that is something that they disagree with, so that they can actually understand where it is your perspective is coming from. And if you can do the same for them, man, that's like you can totally have a pleasant conversation between people who disagree with things, and that's what's really really awesome about it. But the moment that you get frustrated with the conversation, or you're trying to convince somebody of your point, to a way that that you end up starting to throw insults around or something, it's really showing a lack of understanding of where you feel your position is. Because if you are insulting somebody because of it, then it's really showing that you don't have any confidence in what you have just said. I mean, that's really what it is. You should be able to just state it and say, hey, whatever, that's my belief, and just walk away from it. But if you are so adamant about it, or so persistent that you start getting into an argument and insulting of it, then it's really showing more about your own. Like I had an experience just recently with somebody who had insulted somebody else's character. I was in a group actually, and it wasn't their character, it was their features actually, and and it was kind of a new setting for everybody. Like, I mean, we all know each other, but it wasn't like we know each other well or something. And we were just kind of having this casual conversation, and one of them kind of leans in and says, "Hey, about this person over there. Look at them, make." And then she made fun, right? And then they made fun of them. And everybody else in the group was just like, nobody laughed. Everybody was just like, oh, you're on your own on that one. Like, we didn't really say anything, like, as far as engaging with her little humor or what she thought was humorous. And then the moment passed and we moved on, right? But really, that said a lot about the other people in that group, right? Now, if there was somebody in that group who jumped on the bandwagon, kind of jumped on with their and started insulting this other person, even just making, comments to just us so that they couldn't hear, it's really saying a lot about their character, And later, we were having a conversation about that, saying, "Hey, what'd you think about that statement?" And my wife was there, so I was talking with her about it, and I said, that statement really said a lot about them, and that what they feel about themselves. Right? Like, when you are finding something inappropriate about somebody else, or you're finding, like, something disgusting about them, or something like, some odd behavior or whatever, and it's so much so that it's actually stated, like it's bothering you, you really ought to take a look at yourself and see what it is that's inside of you that's making you feel that way, because probably it's something that you don't like about yourself that you're actually noticing in somebody else. You're just not willing to admit it. And that's really, when I looked at it that way, it started making a lot more sense, that they're not trying to, like, insult this other person to make them feel bad. They're actually just trying to make themselves feel good or cover up for their own inadequacies or something like that. And that's generally what you end up finding when people are insulting other people. That's what I found anyway. And it's kind of sometimes it's a difficult thing for me, because I was always trying to be like the comedian, when I, like, even doing bingo, doing stand up, like, I wasn't like a stand up comedian, but you're standing up in front of an audience, engaging in an activity in which that you have to be entertaining, you have to, tell jokes and be funny and stuff like that. And so, being like kind of in that stand-up comedian position, a lot of times you roast people, right? You're roasting people because, making fun of them or something like that is funny for everybody. But then when you do it a lot and you get into that habit of doing it, then I found myself, I would roast people when I shouldn't be doing it, right? Because I was always the stand-up comedian kind of thing. And so I had to become aware of that myself, to say, hey man, there's places when you can do that and it's okay. And then there's other places that you just shouldn't be doing that, because it's really saying a lot more about who you are, right? And how other people are looking at you when you do these insults, to other people. It's showing like like a lack of, like, your own, awareness, or maybe it's just a lack of any, adequacies or something like that. It's saying something about yourself, or at least that's what people are going to be seeing about it, even if you're just trying to be funny about it. Wow, what are we getting on to, man? We are talking some stuff today, aren't we? All right. And Biden is garbage also. I don't know. I wouldn't know, because I never listened to Biden. I never listened to anything he said. Vanity and pride is some of the damnedest traits. Well, it is, but there's also, things to say about, like, being, like, I don't drive a nice car. I don't drive a nice car. But I understand that when you do drive a nice car, people look at you differently, right? And it would be nice to drive a nice car to look cool, right? But is that really important to me? I mean, no, not really. Like, what's important to me is investments, being able to do things with my family, having the money to pay bills. That's important to me. That's what I really value. Driving in a nice car, it's pretty cool. It's okay, I guess. I mean, I would like to do that, but it's not for me right now. Like there'll be a time in the future when it'll be great for me, and that's really the way I feel about it. But I also understand that people look at me differently when I drive that. Like I drive one of the ugliest cars in Astoria, and literally people think I'm homeless. Like when I drive it around, people call me homeless on my videos here, which I think is kind of comical, but it is like it's a really ugly car, and it's not something I'm proud of by any means. But if I drove around in a new Camaro, well, then I would be kind of proud of that. It's like, man, look at my badass Camaro, and I'd probably look pretty cool in it too. All right. Okay. Yes, you spot it. You got it. All right. Look into the presidential bloodlines. You'll be shocked by it. No, they're all related. Every last one of them. Even Obama. Obama's related to him. Just cloud. Yep. Yeah. Emotions just cloud up the situation. All right. I've already had a truck drive through my storefront in the Bay. I've already been in a gunfight. Don't really care about emotions. Well, okay, so you happen to be in a situation that is not, I mean, you know, it's funny. I'm trying to think of like anytime I've ever even remotely come close to a gunfight, and you know, I have never been in a situation like I have been surrounded by firearms my entire life. Like my entire life, there's never like I doubt that there's very most of my life there's been very rare occasions that I haven't had access to a firearm at any given moment, right? Like, and I've never had an issue with firearms, like somebody threatening me or needing to use one in a threatening manner like that, like for defense purposes, ever. Like, I've never been in that situation. So when I think about like people who are in that situation, it leads me to like, what is it that's going down in the chain of events of life that got you there? Right? That why is it that this is occurring to you? Because it's certainly not the fact that guns are present. I mean, I've been in the presence of firearms my entire life, and never once ever even remotely seen an issue come up, right? As far as something like that. And so I wonder, is this like, what is it that's going on in your life that creates that, right? Because I think that it doesn't, that's something else that's going on, and it just happens to be that's the effects of it. I haven't killed somebody. I'll pop caps because I have. Well, yeah, me too. All right, like you know, this is one thing that I've I've definitely learned about the community that I live in is that you respect people's property here, right? It's this is a very liberal area, like it is Portland area, the Pacific Northwest, very liberal area. Everybody I know owns firearms. Everybody, like I don't know anybody who doesn't own firearms. Everybody owns them. And so when you are busting into somebody's house around here, you're asking for it because there's guaranteed that there is going to be a firearm in that house. Like almost, I mean, it's a very rare chance that it won't occur. Maybe more in the city, but the more out in the country you go, almost guaranteed. Like I don't know anybody who doesn't own firearms, right? Alright. Anyway, what's the next question here? Oops, shoot. There we go. we should all own firearms. Yeah, we should. I think everybody should own firearms. There's no reason why people shouldn't own firearms. No, there's no reason at all for it. I mean, unless you're like mentally disturbed or something like that, those people shouldn't. But if you're like a law-abiding individual, who is responsible, I mean, then yeah, everybody should own firearms, right? And everybody should know the laws. That's the other thing. Like, I mean, I see people practicing what they feel is their constitutional rights by open carrying firearms, and I see it in my own town here in Astoria, and that's illegal. You can't carry it. You can't open carry a firearm in Astoria. Well, you can open carry a firearm. You just can't open carry a loaded firearm, right? And so understanding that, like, I see people breaking the law all the time who are exercising their constitutional right. Now, again, you can't have a law that violates the Constitution. It makes that law void, right? You can't do that. But you can create a law that says you can't have a loaded firearm. City Ordinance 5.010 says that, right? I understand these laws. I understand everything about it. They just passed a bunch of laws here in Oregon about firearms and stuff, and people are like, "Oh, what are you going to do about it?" Nothing, right? I mean, I'm going to do nothing about that. I have a constitution, and I have my firearms in my house. That's where it's at, right? I don't plan on. I mean, it's a bummer to go target practicing or something and making it a pain in the ass to travel with your firearms. I can understand all that other stuff, but I am not worried about my personal well-being, right, on any of that stuff. And then, like, even the idea of getting a permit, like a concealed weapons permit, like, I don't agree with that. From a constitutional point of view, I don't agree with asking for permission for anything. I don't ask the government for permission for anything. Like, I had to ask them for permission for a driver's license, right? But I don't ask them for permission to travel. I do ask them for permission to travel in a vehicle. Now, when it comes to a firearm possession, you already have a right to do it, right? So when you go and you ask for a permit, a concealed weapons permit, you are going to ask for something that you do not feel like you have a right to do. And by simply asking for permission and them saying, yes, here, sign, you have a permit, they have permitted you, they have given you permission to something that you had already had a right to do. Now, I might not have a right to conceal the weapon, right, because you got to open carry it, but you have a right to have that firearm. But now you got permission, and permission could be taken away. You see, if you never asked for permission to begin with, can it ever be taken away from you? That's the constitutional point of view that I had, is that you don't ask for permission. That's just something you already have a right to do. And that's one of them, is own firearms. They don't have any legal right to tell you that you can or cannot own a firearm. They don't have any constitutional right to that, right? This is a right that is for me, and it's outside of the government, right? That's the whole point of constitutional rights. Is the government doesn't get to tell you what they are. You get to tell the government what they are. You can conceal legally in Texas? I didn't know that. I will tell a cop to his face, the gun is in my pocket in Texas, and he'll say, leave it there, son. That's cool. Yeah, you don't have that same, not here in Oregon, right? You have a right to possess it, but you don't have a right I mean, I guess one could argue about the right to keep it in possession or to keep it concealed, but I mean, as far as like the legalities, yeah, not so much. Okay, economy is politically controlled thing. No, it's not. Once the politics control breaks, the whole economy goes loose and will end up breaking. No, I mean, listen, I don't want to try and create like an argument for that, but what is happening is that the politics are reacting to economic forces that are happening. Okay, so when you think about some of the monetary policies and how they span administrations, right? You know that it doesn't really matter who's in office. These economic forces are going to continue to play out, and the monetary policies are going to be reacting to those. How politicians behave inside of that can be very noticeable. It can be very like intrusive to your person, right? It can be very like I don't know how to say it. It can be very like seemingly pushing the economy. Like that very much can be what it seems like, but that's not what's taking place, right? What's taking place is that the politicians out there are reacting to economic forces. And most people don't understand what's happening with the economic forces, so they blame it on politics. And that's the reason why you see people are like, complaining about politics about homeless, or that the standard of living, or, how the rich keep getting richer. They blame this all on politics, but really it's economic forces that are at play. And the more you understand that, the more you can actually use this understanding to benefit you, right? But the more you blame it on politics, or put the reasonings on politics, that puts it on this external, right? This external thing that needs to take place in order for me to understand how it is that, or in order for me to like have a better life or something like that, these externals need to behave in a certain fashion or something like that, or these externals are the reasons why my life is all screwed up, right? You blame it on politics, you blame it on these things. But if you look at it from the economic forces that are at place, that are taking place, and the politicians' reaction to those things, and how it is that you interpret them for your own decision making, that's really like what it comes down to. I mean, it's like to not put your energy and focus on the external, but to put it on the internal, to understand the information to the best that you understand it, and to not rely on somebody else's decision to affect your life. Right? I know that's hard to do, but that's really where like the possession of gold and silver, Bitcoin, stocks, real estate, cash, all these different diversifying your wealth into these different positions of savings really kind of leaves you in a way that says, hey, whatever decision they make will affect me, but not that bad, right? Because I have these other things that are at play that will, benefit me as those decisions are made. So that doesn't affect me as bad. And that's really how I try to look at things, because, really, if you put all your thoughts and energy into an external, you're going to be very disappointed. I mean, there is no politician in the world, not one possible person ever, who's going to come in and save the day. Not going to happen, right? So it's best that we understand that and just start making decisions for ourselves. Yes, sir, I've done it. That is cool. I would like to live in a state that had that more leniency with the gun laws, but I'm okay with them. I'm okay with here in Oregon. I don't have any issues with it. I'm cool. Other people have issues with it, but I don't. Because I don't live in fear, for one, and then the other thing is like I don't see where the issue is. Like, I don't have any issues with it, me personally. Like, I can understand how other people would, but you can argue as much as you like, but without political control, the economy will go rampaging, breaking itself, which will be taken back to political control in the end. Listen, I have been studying. Okay, listen, I'm not gonna. You're right. We're not gonna argue on this, Captain Happy. Um, I gave up on politics a couple of years before I started my YouTube channel. I now have a YouTube channel. I don't know how to speak, so I'm surprised I have a YouTube channel. But I have a YouTube channel based on macroeconomics, thoughts, and conversations that absolutely incorporates zero politics into it. Okay, so you can tell me that I can't. I do. I do it every day, and I have been doing it. And since I excluded politics from my economic theories, I've been able to excel myself in a way that is unlike anybody else has done out there that I know, because everybody I know keeps following politics to understand their economics. Right? That's not the way it should go down. I mean, I know it seems counterintuitive. I know it does. And because a lot of people have put so much understanding of economics based from politics, that it makes it very difficult for them to let the political aspect of it go. I mean, I understand that, because I was a hardcore into politics. There was a time that, when Ron Paul was running for president, there wasn't a time that I didn't know every single congressperson and senator's name. Like, I knew them all. I knew laws that were coming into effect. That was the only thing I would listen to, was just politicians and Congress and testimonies and just constant input of political thought and theory and stuff. And when I realized that it was all a show, I lost faith. I lost faith in all that stuff. I have no love for politics whatsoever. When the Republican Party blackballed Ron Paul and basically would not let him speak at the debates, wouldn't give him any voice, didn't give him any airtime, and this was the Republican Party doing this, I was just like, man, I will never trust you guys, ever, right? I mean, I was done with it, and I gave up on all of it. I just turned my TV off, all social stuff. I didn't have a cell phone, nothing. I like was completely like in the dark on everything for years, right? And then it was shortly after Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden got me back into like following things again, because it was him coming out saying, like, the government's following you and tracking you and all this other stuff, that finally got everybody to admit it. Like saying, okay, they are following us, they're tracking us. And I was just like, yes, my protest is finally over now that everybody admits it. And that's when I went and got a phone and started getting back on, social medias and stuff like that, started, engaging in that kind of behavior again. But it took me a long time, I literally was protesting against it. I would not participating in any of that stuff. My phone's about ready to die, I think, guys. I got about 10 more minutes on my power here. So, I get it. Take it from somebody who was very much into politics. I was, and when I gave up on it, man, did it not open up the floodgates of understanding of how economic powers actually work, right? Holy moly. It's just like, I couldn't believe on how much I was misunderstanding the way things operated by following politics. And once I got into just kind of following monetary policy, understanding the banking system, financial systems, it's like the Federal Reserve and the fractional reserve system, the Federal Reserve System, and then really taking on older economic theories, like the Cantillon effect was so, I don't even, so impactful for me to understand, like, the increase and decrease of what happens, the increase and decrease of money in the state. And it makes so much, like, once you start putting all this together and excluding the political thought out of it, all of a sudden everything starts making so much more sense from the economic forces that are at play. And you can take it right down to even your individual person, like a lot of these, the increase and decrease of money to a state can be the increase and decrease of money to an individual. They behave in almost the same fashions, right? That first, when you get the money in, you're really enjoying this new money, you save it, you do smart with it, but then later on you're starting to throw it into lavish things and, just spending it on stupid stuff that you think that the money is never going to end, right? And it's the same thing like the Romans went through, and it's the same thing like, this nation's going through right now. It's the same thing that's going to happen again in the future at some point to some other nation. But it's such a slow process, and it takes forever, that it really does take like an understanding of economic theory from 100 years ago or 200 years ago, and seeing what those economic forces have played out like over the course of lifetimes, many lifetimes even, to understand why, some of the forces that are even happening today. Again, you can blame like the drug use and the homeless and everything else on a political idea, and there will be a million excuses. We could probably, sit here and theorize for 5 days straight, nonstop, 24/7, and come up with all the reasons why it was political environment that created the homeless situation in Portland. And I'm sure we would have a bunch of valid reasons behind it, but really what's going on, it's the increase and decrease of money into a state. It's gentrification. It's rich people moving in and enjoying their luxuries with the new money that they brought from outside of the area. That's what's happening here. And it's created a situation in which that the average job can no longer create a sustainable living, right? So they have to either go homeless or move out of the area. That's what's going on, right? It doesn't take a political like theory or something to figure that one out. It's just what's happening here. And it's been happening for quite some time. I'm experiencing this right now within my own town of Astoria. This used to be a working class town. It was full of fishermen and loggers. That's what it was full of. And that's what you would see down at the bar. Now you go down to the bar and it's full of a bunch of trendy people who are probably remote working and sold a house in LA and now spending $1 million in my town, driving up the prices of everything and forcing all the working class out of here. And now they wonder why they can't find somebody to work on their house. This wasn't a political thing that took place. This is economics. This is what's happening here. And you can find examples of it all over, right? It's just, it doesn't matter what, whether you live in a blue state or red state or whatever. And I'm sure there's probably people that are going, oh man, I live in a red state and that thing isn't happening in my town. No, it's not happening in your town, right? But it does happen in other towns that are, conservative based. So anyhow, moving on. I'm going to give it just a few more minutes here, guys. I'm 9% on my phone, and we are an hour and a half into this. It's the second live stream going. All right. Which has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed actually talking about some of the things that we've mentioned here today. All right. I like the goal to understand theories, but theories are theories, and for the reason they never fully work. Excuse me. And then comes politics, and things will be forced to direction defined by politics. Okay, man. I mean, that's the meaning. That's the meaning you give it, right? And I don't have that meaning in my life. Politics don't control my life. They aren't even that important in my life. I don't give them that kind of importance to my decisions, to the meaning that I give my life, or anything else. Politics are not involved. Economics are, like the political decisions that I guess, I don't know, give me a stimulus check. I mean, that was a nice political idea. That was one. I don't know, like, man, I don't let them mess with me. I don't even think about them. They're not even involved in my process of thinking. Ron Paul was one of the only good ones we've ever had fighting for us. I agree. I totally agree. One of the biggest honors that I ever have in my entire life that I will think of forever was simply just to be on the same stage that man spoke on. I mean, to think that I got to speak to the same audience on the same stage as Ron Paul did. I mean, that right there is like one of the biggest moments of my entire life, right? I didn't actually get a chance to meet him. He was surrounded by security and people and all kinds of stuff, and I just wasn't gonna bug him. But to think that I was that close, like, I've always wanted to meet Ron Paul. To do that was close enough. Like, for me, that was the moment, The politics is a bottomless pit. It is. Yes, you do, Yui. You follow macro to understand politics. Okay. I mean, maybe I understand the political decisions that are being made out there from following macro, but I don't follow politics. Like, I don't know what they're up to. Like, I really don't, And when stuff happens, like, even like all the stuff during the pandemic, I didn't listen. I didn't listen to anything that anybody had anything to say. It wasn't until the stimulus packages were coming out that I actually engaged in any kind of understanding of what those stimulus packages were. Because until then, it was all credible threats. You know how many promises of stimulus packages that I heard people talking about that never got them? Like, people were spending money that they had not got yet, thinking that they were going to get stimulus from it. It was a lot like the student loan relief, kind of the same thing happened. Let's see here. I can only say you will get your economy understanding much better when you always add some politic risk into the assumptions. Hey man, Captain. I'm not gonna argue with the way that you do it, man. If that's the way that it works for you, man, more power to you. I hope it does. I mean, and hey, the more information, the better, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. If you feel that information is going to benefit you in a way that you can excel through life, I'm not going to try and stop you from doing it. But convincing me that that's what I need to do in my life ain't going to happen. I've already did that. I went down that road. It didn't work out very well for me. This road is working out incredibly well for me. So I'm going to stick to my plan, stick to my guns here, I always have. You know who has gun and drug problems? That's Hunter Gun 2 VC Dumpster. Okay, whatever. I'm sorry, man. I don't mean to say whatever. I just don't understand. All right. Politics can do intervention. Okay. I hate how they have to take The fruits of our labors, FPR, the shenanigans, operations, all levels. Okay, I felt a lot better when I stopped caring about politics too. It's really, I mean, it was so funny. Like, I can trigger somebody right now when it comes to politics. Like, especially if I know that they're into it, I will say stuff that will just fire them up like immediately, right? And I think to myself, man, you guys are so hung up on your expectations and ideas of what the future should be like and whatever. Like, I will blame things on, like, if I know somebody's a Biden fan or something like that, I will blame stuff like just ridiculous things. Oh shit. Okay, guys, I guess I gotta go. I'm losing my power here. All right. Well, oh man, I can barely see my phone. All right. Uneducated economist, you let me know.